Everyone, this is A Bit of Business. My name is John Fitzgerald, and on behalf of learmedia.tv and the British and Irish Trading Alliance, welcome to the show. One subject that is rapidly getting the attention of the BITA community through initiatives like the Be Plastic Aware campaign is the amount of plastic used in the construction sector and in society in general. With almost 25% of the plastic produced in the UK being consumed by the construction industry, and with 50,000 tons of plastic packaging waste generated by UK construction each year. And that's 7 times the weight of the roof at Wembley Football Stadium, by the way. It's no wonder that people are sitting up and taking notice. Layer in on top of that the fact that huge amounts of plastic end up in our oceans and waterways every single day. And it is clear that we all need a little bit of education on this topic, and collective action is required. My guests today, Brendan Kenny and Bill Dale, are well placed to help us understand this topic in much more detail. Brendan is the chair of BITA in the Isle of Man, is passionate about the environment, and believes strongly that business should create profit with purpose. He has over 35 years of senior level business experience within the construction, technology, and distribution sectors. Brendan is also a director in Changing Streams and believes with the right strategies and connections, they can generate exponential change in the eradication of plastics in not just the construction sector, but further afield across the globe. He has also famously said that when it comes to plastics, convenience has turned out not to be so convenient. How true is that? Bill Dale from the Isle of Man is the founder of Beach Buddies, a charity running more than 200 beach cleans a year to ensure the Manx coastline is one of the cleanest in Europe. After conducting cleanups with friends and collecting more than 30,000 pieces of litter over 6 weekends, Bill launched the initiative across the Isle of Man in 2007 to encourage more people to get involved. The charity now has 12,000 registered volunteers, amounting to approximately 14% of the island's population. And in 2016, UNESCO granted the entire island Biosphere Reserve status as an outstanding example of a place where people and nature work in harmony. Beach Buddies has achieved a great deal since launch, creating a very low-cost, efficient, and sustainable system of keeping beaches free from rubbish. Their method is very simple. Get small teams of friends and like-minded individuals together, host events, try to find some small sponsorship to buy basic equipment, tell your local politicians and the local media what you're doing, and then just get started. That's what they did on the Isle of Man, and Beach Buddies is now being recognized around the world for what it has achieved. So that's it, folks. Please do check out the BITA website, bita.ie, for the latest updates on all upcoming live and online events and news about ongoing initiatives, including the Be Plastic Aware campaign I mentioned earlier. Brendan and Bill coming up next. Please do stay tuned. Gentlemen, welcome to the show, and let's dive straight in. Can you tell us a little bit about Beach Buddies and Changing Streams and why you got involved? So, Bill first, please, and then over to you, Brendan.
Okay. Well, it started for Beach Buddies in the Isle of Man in 2006. And I was basically walking my dogs on the beach, and human beings tend to walk down near the waterline, but the dogs were much more interested in the junk up at the top above the high water mark in amongst the sand and the reeds. And I couldn't quite believe what I saw when we went up to a place about maybe a mile from the access point. So maybe not a place where people would normally walk that far. And the quantities of plastic bottles in particular, but generally plastic items, was just overwhelming, to the point that we shifted 30,000 pieces of plastic in 6 afternoon sessions. And then that's just one beach. You know, the Isle of Man's got 100 miles of beach. So I decided pretty much single-handed to just give it a shot and see how far I could go around the Isle of Man's beaches. And I didn't really ask anybody to join me because there was a stigma in those days attached to picking up anybody else's rubbish. But then after 4 or 5 years, I realized that it was a bit too much of a job for one man. And we asked for volunteers, and in a population of 85,000, our current figure now in July 2021 is just gone over 16,000, wow, which is a huge proportion of the people. And it's captured the imagination. And it moves on in strides from there. The fact that you guys are interviewing me here shows that what we're doing in the Isle of Man is actually setting a standard. And I have to say, there's been some international interest as well in what we're doing. So it's been a pretty serious success story.
It sounds like there's been a groundswell of civic pride there, Bill, and people getting involved.
I think what's happened here, because I run an education system with the schools. In fact, without the Education Authority knowing it, I've changed the curriculum. And all the children in schools now, in fact, I ran 3 school events only just yesterday and 2 the day before. They completely get the message and they go home and educate the parents. And what has happened here is there's been a mindset change. You know, it's now become unacceptable to drop litter in the streets. There are, of course, the odd hooligans, you know, young lads throwing things out of car windows. I don't think you'll ever stop them when they're in their late teens and early 20s. So it's up to the 95% of the rest of us to clean up after them. But there is a massive noticeable difference. And everybody who comes here to visit or comes to the Isle of Man has seen the difference. And it's setting an example which other people around the world are watching.
Fantastic. And Brendan, from your perspective with Changing Streams and your involvement?
Yeah, so I got involved with Changing Streams when the founder, Neil Maxwell, asked me to give him a hand with it, which is, you know, I'm quite passionate about the plastics side. And what got me was Changing Streams is about changing and reducing the amount of plastics in the construction sector. Construction sector is one of the biggest waste producers in any industry. And it touches us all because we all live in the built environment, in our homes and our offices, our supermarkets, etc., etc. And what struck me, it was a few years ago when I worked on another project called Recipro, was that 10% of brand new materials, around 10%, goes into the waste streams of brand new materials because of the way the construction industry works. And we were tackling that by taking that surplus material and moving it into community projects, creating carbon reporting, social impact reporting, and waste diversion reporting back to the contractor to prove that. So when I got involved with Neil and looked at Changing Streams, and I realized the amount of plastic which was being produced and the waste which was being produced in the construction sector, and realized where that went to. And, you know, it does go into the waste streams, but inevitably, like everything else, it moves into the environment because the weather lifts it out of skips, throws it into the streets, into the streams, etc., etc. And when plastic breaks down, it doesn't go away for around 600 years. Because it breaks down to microplastics, to nanoplastics. And when I started to really understand and look at this, the fact that we're eating plastic, we're breathing plastic, and the research hasn't yet been completely completed on this. It's at very early stages. But we believe that plastic is the new asbestos. It was a fantastic material with great properties in terms of helping us to keep food fresher, etc., etc. But do you know what? For the convenience it is, the actual long-term effects of what it's going to do to humanity, and also not just to humans, but to the whole animal kingdom. I mean, we don't know the effects such as cancer-causing elements of it as it breaks down, as it goes into your system. But what chance have the animal kingdom got? You know, it's just phenomenal. And when you link plastics, because it's a fossil fuel derivative, with the carbon and the climate change impact, you can't solve the climate change without solving the plastic pandemic. And with the move, and look at the bigger picture, with the move to electric vehicles and moving away from petrol and diesel, where are the oil companies going to go? They're going to go into plastics. They're going to drive plastic production because they're trying to find a market for their products. So all we're doing is exacerbating the problem of creating this this soup of plastic which we breathe and eat. And there's only one direction we're going unless we turn the tap off at source. And the link with Beach Buddies is changing streams. Everything leads to the ocean. Everything ends up at the beach. You know, and without the ocean, we don't survive. It's the lungs of the earth.
And you know, I guess we're coming somewhat out of a pandemic, and over the last 15 or 16 months, what have been the biggest challenges for Beach Buddies and for changing streams when we've been in virtual lockdowns? Has it impacted the organization? Has it helped or hindered your progress?
In terms of expanding what we do, because we were poised at one point to have an international setup around the world. There were lots of different people, and they still are in touch. And the pandemic obviously stopped all travel. And I think also an element of fear came along with that about how to approach the pandemic. I mean, really, we still don't quite know how to deal with it. And here we are, you know, nearly two years coming up down the line. So, but during that period, we've developed over the last 10 years a system where we have our own bins on beaches. Now, that sounds very simple, but there's a little bit more to it than that, because we recycle items. So we empty the bins, then we empty it out and recycle all things like plastic and hard plastics and glass bottles and metal. And then we burn the rest at an energy from waste plant, which is the same technology they use in Scandinavia to make electricity. So we're quite fortunate that we're one of only a handful of these machines in the whole of the UK, the whole of the British Isles. Now, if we hadn't had that, we would have had to continue with landfill. And landfill is going to be a huge problem coming up in decades to come, because all the stuff that's been thrown in there in the last 30, 40 years is now starting to decompose at an enormous rate. And there is effluent and goodness knows what coming out of the ground. And people want to reclaim the land on which this stuff has been dumped. So, because there's value in it. And also, apparently, I was told many moons ago that the way that we used to dispose of things like television sets and radios and electronic items, it's actually cheaper to take the gold out of a landfill site than it is to mine gold from the original source in places like South Africa. So somebody somewhere is probably going to turn to digging up landfill sites. Now, what the hell are we going to do with the rubbish that comes out of the landfill sites? And I think the energy from waste is certainly one way for doing that. And it is efficient. We've got a pretty clean island as a result. But there is a mindset change required from everyone. Brendan hit the nail on the head there where he said, there's nothing wrong with plastic. I mean, plastic as a material used in the proper way and disposed of properly, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just that human beings look on it as a throwaway item of no value of any sort. And I also think there's potentially a business coming along the line. Somebody's going to work out how to use this plastic to, for instance, replace park benches, wooden park benches in a park. You know, there are tens of thousands, probably, well, there's millions around the world, but even in Britain alone, there'll be hundreds of thousands of wooden benches. If you made those out of plastic, they'd probably last 20, 30 times longer. And you would get a value out of the waste material. But as Brendan very aptly put it, what we're all forgetting is the impact this is having on the environment and on wildlife. I mean, you can imagine when fish are swimming around in the ocean. I was explaining this to children yesterday. When they see a little piece of microplastic, they just think that that's food. They have no reason not to think it's food. So consequently, they eat it. And they have incredible sense of smell, you know, birds and sea animals. So if there was any food attached to that at any point, there's a degree of that is still left in a piece of plastic, no matter how old it is. And the animals eat it. And within no time at all, their stomach is full and they can't dispose of it, they die. And nobody really knows the figure, but without question, even around our own oceans, we've noticed a huge decline in the number of seabirds and fishing catches. So that, you know, and we're doing a good job here. So imagine in places like the Far East where they don't seem to have any policy at all, where they just throw their junk in the river and it goes out to sea. I mean, you know, we've all got to wake up. You know, the world's got to wake up soon, because we may well go past the point of no return.
And Okay, so Isle of Man sounds like a center of excellence for this, Bill. Thanks to your efforts, it's taken time. Clearly, it's taken a lot of education, and I'm just wondering if that's one of the secrets to the success here, and how we do more of that. And Brendan, from your perspective, is that critical to solving this problem going forward, to educate people at an early age, and then to sort of push that to a wider audience so people actually understand the complexities and how everything is interrelated, etc.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, Changing Streams is built on education. We're partnered with Liverpool University, and it's about research and finding alternatives to other materials which are sustainable, which we can replace plastic. And how we do that is we go back to look forward. 70 or 80 years ago, houses and buildings were built without plastic, and they were built well. We can all walk around our towns and see the old buildings and the churches, and they're all still standing, and magnificent pieces of architecture. So we have to go back and say, okay, well, how would we have evolved and developed product if plastic wasn't an alternative, wasn't a solution? How would we, would the windows have developed with better coatings for timber to preserve them longer? There's all sorts, from plasterboards to architrave to whatever the product is. We have to get that research done. So when we go back into the schools, and the children are very, very well far ahead of us in their environmental awareness, etc. They're the ones who are going to come through. They're going to want the ones who start to do their masters and do their PhDs in different ways to solve the problem. With their innovation and their passion. Unfortunately, I'm on the wrong side of 50 now, and it's going to be down to the children and coming through to clear up our mess. I mean, this has happened in our lifetime. We've allowed this convenience to just overtake us and overrun us. Coke, a cold bottle of glass Coke. In fact, forget the sugar inside it. But that was a beautiful thing. We've all seen the adverts and we've all been taken in by the marketing. But moving that into plastic, which then ends into the ocean, we have to shame, and the market will drive the change. I was reading something yesterday about Danone, who are basically pledged a percentage of their profits into the environmental issues, right? They're changing their packaging. There's a whole drive in that organization to reduce the plastic content and make themselves more sustainable. The ESGs, which we'll all hear about more and more and more, economic, social, and governance, how that is going to be embedded into organizations to drive that change. And that, I'm a realist. We can all have the utopia of let's become a Marxist economy, et cetera, and we're all going to be equal, and we can just make the change. That's not going to happen. What we have to do is we have to let the market help to drive the change, and people to come up with those new ideas, those new businesses, as Bill was saying, and those new businesses will drive the change into the market, because the consumers, ultimately, the ones who've woken up, say, actually, I don't want that anymore. I want this. I want something different. And that's going to make these new products and new services more economically viable, which will then inevitably drive change. And I'm quite confident that we will. When you see the rise of some technology businesses and how fast that they've become dominant, I can see a rise in environmental and sustainability businesses coming very, very dominant and taking over some of the entrenched players very, very, very quickly, because the market will drive that change.
Well, let's come back to some of
I would agree with that. Yeah, that's a really good point, that, Brendan. The way it's working here is that we're using education the same way. So therefore, you get to the parents via the children, and the children genuinely care. And what I do like, is the teachers who are between the age of sort of like early 20s and 40. They're a young group in themselves. And they really care too, and my generation, I'm in my 60s, have dumped this problem on their doorstep. And I, personally, I feel a responsibility that my generation needs to sort this out. But to go back to a point you mentioned there about the value of the plastic, I remember when I was a kid and you were talking about the freezing cold bottle of Coke. there was a deposit return system. So when you paid for it, you paid what the equivalent for what now about 5 pence. So you took it back and got your 5 pence back. Now, if we reintroduce that now, I mean, the cost of shifting rubbish and collecting it now is unbelievable amounts of money. If the UK government, the British Isles, everywhere, Ireland, everywhere, just decide, let's have a deposit return system, you would have the world's children on beaches and glens and parks and roads picking up plastic bottles, and some of them making themselves a tidy little amount of money. But you would instantly clean up the country. Yes. Because there's value in it.
Yeah, and you build that into the price of the product anyway.
Yes, so exactly. So there's no cost.
You're taking me way back now, Bill, to how I actually got the pocket money, because that's how I got my midget gems, which was collecting the bottles of pop and taking them back to the corner shop.
I want to come back to some of it. I mean, I was going to ask a question about technological solutions, and I mean that's very low tech what you just mentioned there, Bill. But it's a good one. But I'll come back to that in a second. Before that, Bill. Government has a role to play in this as well. And government essentially especially as it relates to business, and government has, I suppose, several levers to pull in relation to plastic pollution or the ESG or the green economy agenda. And it's taxation and regulation. So how can you see the government stepping in here to facilitate the acceleration of businesses paying attention to this industry, whether it's in the construction industry or wider in society, to sort of make this behavior change actually happen?
It's very interesting, actually, because only 2 days ago, the Isle of Man government and Beach Buddies launched a new project where all restaurants, bars and takeaways have agreed to, or over a period of probably 12 months, are going to remove all single-use plastics and replace them with biodegradables. Now I think this is a world first. I don't know if I'm not absolutely certain, but I'm pretty sure it is. I've been working on this for about 3 years. Brendan's heard about this from me a few years ago. Sadly, these things take such a long time because when you deal with governments, they can't seem to make a decision and get on with it, which is a shame. But having said that, we have reached that point. So we've actually introduced that system, and then people will get a badge of honor, which they can stick on their door, and they'll get a certificate. I've already, even in the first couple of days, been inundated with requests for certificates and acknowledgement that they've already done this, because there are a lot of places they knew this was coming. So that is a very positive step forward, and that is working with government. And let's face it, for the government, it's a free ride. There's very, very little cost being involved in this for them. Maybe a little bit of graphic design and a cup of tea at the launch. But honestly, this is low cost and it's very simple. And I think the whole answer has to be simple, so that you engage with everybody and they can understand it. If it's complicated and it's got 20 different clauses to it, people will lose interest after the span of attention is poor. These days, the way the internet makes us all think, everybody's span of attention is poor. So if you keep it simple and people understand it, like the deposit return, like this, where remove single-use plastics, people will understand that. And I think too, the public will endorse the premises and the restaurants and the bars which go this route, and the ones who are slow to do it, I think they might find themselves with a bit of a problem. There's a genuine movement over here, and of course we have a general election coming up, which is very handy. And that was something else I've launched in conjunction with a group called Plastic Busters and 3 Pieces of Plastic. And we have actually stated that anybody who doesn't have an environmental campaign within their manifesto, and especially about the issue of dealing with disposable items and reusables and regeneration and climate change and all the issues involved with the environment, then we are saying as a group that these candidates are not worth voting for, because this is what the world needs to do. We cannot put our heads under the carpet anymore. We have actually got to get out there and get off our backsides and do something about it.
Yeah, and the Isle of Man is a unique place because you've got control of the government, self rule, etc. But also everything which comes into the island is imported, or grown on the island. Yes. So the government setting the standards of what can come across and what can't come across is, it is a fantastic position to be in. And when it comes to construction, they can set the standards in construction. They can set the standards for the carbon elements, carbon reduction elements within construction, within the carbon use in buildings, etc., etc. So they've got the unique ability to set their own rules and be that beacon, which I'm very passionate about the Isle of Man, as you probably both know. But it is got the massive ability to show the world how to do things, and that's a fantastic position to be in, and that will make it more attractive for businesses to want to set up there, people to want to live there, etc. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Everybody wins, I think. Yeah, and best practice,
exactly.
Best practice, regardless of where it is, I think. And so we've talked about the importance of education, which is relatively low tech. We've talked about bottle refund schemes, relatively low tech. Brendan, what sort of technological advances are you excited about over the next 3 to 5 years to help us address this problem, or help us at least start on that journey?
So one of the things which I've been working on for about 5 years with a young entrepreneur who's doing very well, which is the basis of our COVID passport solution, which is the V code, which is a unique identifier. And what we're thinking about is how we can relate the product to the person, so the person has responsibility for their purchase in the longer term. Not dissimilar to the bottle deposit scheme, etc. And making people accountable for what they've got, and also if they do lose it, encouraging other people to take advantage of the value which they've left behind, which is what we're talking about. Is understanding how we can actually run through the ownership model of a product, so that fly tipping as an example. So if you've bought a bed, or you've bought a fridge, etc., you're responsible for that fridge until it's been disposed of properly, right? That's where my mind is, and where the technology is how can we link the responsibility of the ownership of product resource until it's been properly disposed of. And technology is there to be able to do that. It's going to take time to get these things through, and we're probably going to have to tackle other problems first as the use cases before that happens. Also, the other thing about technology, I built a technological solution for the Isle of Man called Report a Problem, Bill, and I'm not sure that they're promoting that much these days. Reportaproblem.im.
They're not, no.
Right, which allows people to report fly tipping, report graffiti, report potholes, report problems into the community, back into government, for the government to then have a holistic view of where the problems are to then go and deal with it. I think technology has a role to play, but I think Bill's probably more on the money with the educational piece and getting the children and the parents to actually think and understand their impact of what they're doing themselves on society and on the planet. And that behavior change is probably going to be more important probably than the technological change, I think. But we've got to be running things concurrently to navigate. We're breaking new ground. We don't know a lot of. We don't know what we don't know. So that's where research comes in and education comes in to try and find our way forward, to find new ways to do things differently.
Yeah, I think actually there, Brendan, I was slightly underestimating your impact, because there is a system of sorts where people can report fly tipping and incidents where footpaths are damaged or anything, any item of pollution. So it does exist on a small scale. It's nothing like it should be. And another aspect of this too is we have occasional, like everywhere in the world, we have fly tipping, and building industry, and sadly the construction industry is the most guilty. And only in a recent case, somebody had dumped some stuff in a beauty spot, a beautiful place. And of course it was pictured. They found out who it was because the idiots also leave barcodes, and somebody even left an invoice with their address on, right? So they phone the guy up and go and meet him and say, listen, you've dumped this, you'd better shift it. And I thought, well, here's an opportunity. Poor guy, but let's make an example of him, take him to court, let's get somebody fined for the first time for properly, and in the newspaper and publicity attached to fly tipping, and then fine him such a significant amount that acts as a deterrent. And you know what they did? They sent him a letter and say, well, you've been a naughty boy, but don't do it again. Now that, as far as I'm concerned, is a mistake. There was an opportunity. You know, I was almost even thinking of going to the guy and saying, listen, I'll pay the fine for you, but somebody needs to be prosecuted, and there needs to be an example set, because at the moment there's no consequences for dumping rubbish.
Yeah.
And I've also been speaking I might be giving away a world secret here, but I've been speaking to people in Silicon Valley in San Francisco about how to use the barcode that's on pretty much every single item that you buy in a supermarket. I mean, everything's got a barcode now. You know, it beeps as it goes through and you pay for it. There's a piece of information on there, and I don't see any reason why the person who buys the item cannot have some sort of like an identity dot spattered back at the item that you buy, so that when it's found in the street, all you have to do is scan it and you find the name and the address of the person.
That's
and
exactly
there you go. And you knock on the door and say, excuse me, mate, you've dropped this. You're fined 50 quid. Before you know where you are, the government will have made millions, and the whole thing will change overnight.
Yeah, Brendan's already there, I think.
That's exactly the technology we've got, Bill.
You've got that?
Yes.
Well, there you go. You've beaten me to it.
Yeah, that's what we've been working on. It's called the V code.
Right.
Very
so
good.
I describe it as a barcode on steroids.
Yeah.
And basically, it's a permission-based technology that when you view the code, you get your information. If someone else views the code, they get different information based on who you are, where you are, and what permissions you have.
Just a name and address, and nothing to do with finance. It's not a way to steal your money. No, just a name and an address.
Yeah, exactly.
Brilliant. Yeah.
Bill, clearly you're winning with Beach Buddies, and clearly there's probably areas that you'd like to see for improvement, and what specifically is sort of on your agenda now for the next 3 to 5 years with Beach Buddies?
I think closing the gap on the 10 or 15% who are not engaged with this. We are setting examples, and to be honest, if 85 or 90% of the population is picking up all the rubbish, then the damage caused by the small percentage is actually being covered. But that's not really the proper solution. You know, like apparently I'm told in Singapore, if you drop things like chewing gum on the street, there are people walking around like parking attendants. We don't have anybody doing that. I've already suggested to the Isle of Man government that we get rid of half of our parking attendants, because I think that's socially not very acceptable anyway. You know, getting nicked for parking, for goodness sake, because you're too long parking on a piece of tarmac. Whereas throwing rubbish in the street is much more offensive to everybody. So I've already suggested that we relocate half of the parking attendants and get them to fine anybody, and go around with a body cam. Anybody who dumps litter in the street, get them fined. And once that starts to happen, then people will realize that actually it is socially unacceptable. And we do have a very good reputation. I think perhaps living on an island, we're sort of carried away with the idea that it's just us, but we are setting an example, and Brendan knows this, around the world. People are phoning in, and I'm filming videos. I did one with Florida University recently. People are watching what we are doing in our little place in the Isle of Man with 85,000 people. So I think we still have a debt of honor and a duty to continue to set that best example. And the other thing too, if people come here and look at it, you know, particularly if it's government representatives, to see what we're doing, I think we need to do better. You know, we are doing really, really well, but I still think we should be doing better. We should be going for absolute excellence. That is my aim, is to go for excellence.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you said earlier, Bill, you've got the election this year. You know, we've got the new MHAs coming in, probably a new chief minister, new economic development minister. You know, yes. The economic development policy, you know, encouraging sustainable manufacturing, sustainable products, as you know, and utilize the Isle of Man as a place where they can actually deploy their products as I hasten to use the word test bed, but you know, prove their products on the Isle of Man in an environmentally UNESCO biosphere environment to make change and then grow out from the Isle of Man. You know,
yes,
an amazing opportunity.
It is, yeah. And I think that one of the things I've been talking with another group, I've got that many projects on the go, but there's another group where we're talking about trying to promote the Isle of Man as a fantastic place to come for outdoor holidays, just like the Lake District. But at the moment, we have pretty much zero people coming here for that reason. And I think we're guilty in the Isle of Man of hiding this place as a hidden treasure, a bit like in Ireland, where you guys have one of the most beautiful countries in the world. And you don't really tell too many people about it. You know, it's almost like you don't want to let too many people know in case you get flooded with tourists. But we need some. You know, our tourist industry used to be enormous. We were best part of 500,000 people a year. I doubt if it's 100,000 now. In fact, it's probably well under that, you know. So there's an opportunity here for the economy to grow on the back of this. You know, this is not just setting a sort of an eco agenda. There's an economic benefit to be had out of this as well. And you know, sadly, that's the way the world has to operate. Money is needed to make the world go around. But if we can ride on the back of what we've done as an island and as a population, and people come here and tell their friends, you know, before you know where you are, we could be looked on worldwide as the center of excellence. So, I get a bit down sometimes about, you know, how long it takes to get things done. But I've never really lost that feeling of opportunity and optimism about the future, because I think we've got something very special here, and I like to think that we are part of it as Beach Buddies. But it is a very, very special community, and when people like Brendan come along and get involved with all of his ideas, you know, we've got a really nice network here, which and we're going to expand it here today with you guys with BITA, you know, and we've had a good relationship with you guys for a good while now, so. I think collectively we shouldn't underestimate what we can do, and I really got a very positive feeling about the future.
Fantastic, gents. I'm conscious of the time. A couple of more questions, and let me start with this one. How can people get involved with Beach Buddies and with Changing Streams, and what would that involvement look like? Start with you, Bill, on this one.
Okay, well, locally, we use social media like everybody does. We're very fortunate that the local media here, the newspaper and the radio stations, are very positive and help us. So when we have our weekly volunteer events, they promote that, and we turn up with, you know, hundreds of people coming. It's fantastic. But we also have a website, beachbuddies.net, and through that is where we've expanded internationally. So we have branches now all over the place. There's 2 separate branches in Hong Kong. We've got branches in the United States, Hawaii, Italy, Finland, you name it, pretty much every country. We set up a branch in Scotland. I have a scheme to set up a huge number of branches the whole way around the British Isles, which I can't really tell you about at the moment, but that could happen once the lockdown is over. So there will be easy opportunities to get involved. But the other thing is, people can just go out themselves, and it doesn't have to be a beach. You know, our name is Beach Buddies, but like we were saying with Brendan, it starts in the street. And if the rubbish is thrown in the street 100 miles away from the ocean, it goes down a drain, in a river, out to sea, and on the beach. I mean, that's where 95% of it is coming from. And the other 5% is from marine. So 95% is coming down rivers. It's not people going to the beach. Some people go to the beach and leave junk on the beach. It's nearly all coming down rivers. So this is something where everybody can be involved. You don't have to live on a beach to be a member of Beach Buddies. You can clean up your park or your street or your local football ground or anywhere. Every little bit that you pick up helps. Canals. I've got a fantastic photograph of canals outside probably the world's richest football team, Manchester City, and it is a disgrace. The stuff that's lying in that canal, it's a disgrace. And people need to realize that stuff eventually is going to break down and end up on the beaches, and perhaps on the beaches even of the Isle of Man. So we've all got to wake up and realize that we're all part of this, and we can all do something to make a positive impact. And believe me, once you've done it a couple of times, you'll be amazed how much you enjoy it. Give it a shot and see what happens as a family. It's great fun.
Very good. Brendan, same question to you. How do people get involved with Changing Streams?
Well, we've got a website, changingstreams.org. So if you go onto that website, you can, if you're an organization, you can become a member, get involved, work with us with the university to look at where your plastic footprint is and help us to try and eliminate it or reduce it. Join the likes of Peel, who are members, and Your Housing Group. We have webinars which we run on a monthly basis, an audience with, and I for my sins host that. So I have some interesting people on, not dissimilar to you, John. So, you know, come along and have a look at that, get involved with some of our events. As we open up, we'll be doing some live events, etc., etc. COVID secure, I must say, with one of my other hats on. And yeah, just get involved. If you're passionate about wanting to reduce your plastic footprint, you know, go to the website, become a member, and work with us to help solve the problem collectively, because we can't do this in isolation. You know, we like Bill, we want to create a global community of like-minded people who want to share experiences and share knowledge. That education piece keeps running through. You know, if someone's got a solution which can be worked in retail, which can then be adapted into hospitality or into construction, let's share that knowledge. Let's share those ideas. Let's share the change. You know, it's about working together collectively and breaking down the silos. You know, because the problem will have been solved by someone on the planet. We've just got to find them and we've got to connect them.
Yes.
Gentlemen, let's leave it there. Your passion, your energy, and your conviction around this subject is just quite breathtaking and inspiring. So thank you so much for joining us today. Ladies and gentlemen, the message is very simple. It starts with each one of us to do our little bit to help solve this problem. My name is John Fitzgerald. This has been A Bit of Business. Thank you all so much for watching. All the best for now.